Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 152. I am your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan. If he can't do it, it's unlikely anyone can. And this is the world's first podcast fully dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels around the globe. Thanks for joining me today, folks. If you're looking for a podcast on wooden boats, you're at the right place. If you're looking for the podcast on fiberglass boats, I'm not sure where that one is, actually. It's probably out there, though. If you search for it on Google, you'll probably find it. Anyway, we aim to have some fun today, and our featured segment is an interview with Jay Benford of Benford Design. Jay is a prolific boat designer, has lived on a lot of cool boats himself, designed a lot of boats. I believe he's built a few boats too. I had a chance to sit down with him during the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival in September and talk shop. So stick around. I think you're going to like that interview. Today's podcast is sponsored by Duckworks Boat Building Supply. Duckworks is located in Harper, Texas. And if you need supplies to build a boat or refurbish a boat, or you need plans for a boat or sails for a boat or hardware for a boat or anchors for your boat, or if you need books about boats, or you need fiberglass cloth or resin or screws, they've pretty much got it all there. Chuck and Sandra Lineweber, friends of mine, run the store. They do a great job. It's an online business. I would encourage you to check it out at hookedonwoodenboats.com/duck, D-U-C-K. Now, I do want to mention that they are featuring a book that was recently published by Tom Pamperin, and I've actually interviewed Tom before for the podcast. This book is called Jagular Goes Everywhere, Misadventures and a $300 Sailboat. So I'm going to read you a little blurb about this book. It actually sounds pretty interesting. With a steadfastly contrarian sensibility and a lively appreciation of both the profound and the absurd, author Tom Pamperin sets out in his cheap plywood skiff Jagular on a series of sail and oar misadventures ranging from the Gulf Coast to the Great Lakes. The result is at once a tongue-in-cheek expression of the realities of small boat cruising and a playful exploration of the inevitable tension between cynicism and romance, between self-deception and sincerity. So I'm going to set up a link so you can go directly to look at the book on Chuck and Sandra's website. The link will be hookedonwoodenboats.com/TP. as in Tom Pamperin. Again, that's hookedonwoodenboats.com/TP. And the book costs $12.50. And if you want to listen to the interview I did with Tom, it was earlier this year. It's episode number 124. So you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/124 to listen to that interview. Okay, so you'll probably be happy to know that last weekend, I was happy to know, I cleared up my garage a little bit more and I rolled my Scamp in the garage, and I took the tarp off it that had been on there since I purchased it a year ago this month. Pretty crazy. So she is in the garage and I'm getting ready to start. So I'm pretty excited, actually. I've got a little more organization to do in the garage and so on, but at least she's in there getting dry. She was very dry. There was no water in her. So, but I've kind of been using her as a storage unit. So I got quite a bit of stuff inside the boat. As you may recall, she's a partially built Scamp sailboat. She's planked up, has the bulkheads in, and that's about it. So I'll be making some modifications was built from a kit. It was started from a kit, and it was one of the first series of kits that were cut. And for instance, the bulkhead access, the access holes between bulkheads were round circles. Well, later on, they decided to actually follow the shape of the hull and the seat riser, I guess you would call it, which gave you much more room to get objects in between the different bulkheads when you're in the storage after the boat is built. So I'm going to be cutting those out a little bit bigger and doing some things like that, starting work on here. So I'm really excited. It's cool to have her in the garage and be looking at another Scamp, and I really would love to get her done by next year, so we'll see. So that's about all the news for this week. We're going to move on to the interview with Jay Benford of Benford Design. So take it away, Jay. It is September 5th, 2014. I am sitting with Jay Benford in Port Townsend, Washington. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. We're at the Wooden Boat Festival 2014, and Jay and I, we tried to hook up last year and didn't make it, but we've been connecting by email, and so glad you could be here today, Jay.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, so we're in the first day of the festival. Jay's a design guy, but give us a little short biography of yourself, Jay. You know, where you grew up and what you were doing.
Well, I'm reluctant to use the phrase "grew up" because I'm in the adult toy business. You know, I get to play with boats all the time. But I spent my first 20 years in the Rochester, New York area. We lived on the northern suburb on the lake, or closer to the lake, Ontario.
Oh, wow. So
we were sailing there the summer before I was born. My folks bought a little 21.5-foot gaff sloop cruising boat. And that was the boat I learned to sail on. They took me sailing before I could walk. You know, I maintain that I thought going sailing and doing this boating stuff was normal, but I later came to realize, you know, not everybody did it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I spent that time there. Went to University of Michigan long enough to determine that it was really the naval architecture programs were focused on big ships and not small boats. And so I'm one of their dropouts.
Okay.
But I went to work for a local boat company in Rochester for a short while, doing a little bit of drawing for the boat stuff they were building. And then I'm not sure how, but John Atkin agreed to let me come work with him for a while. And I spent a while apprenticing with the Atkins in the early 60s.
So for those listening that don't know who he is, give us just a little brief description of him, if you would, Jay.
Well, John's father, William Atkin, started designing and building boats in 1906. And John joined the company in the late 30s with an interruption for service in World War II. And during the 30s and onwards, every month in Motorboating magazine there was an Atkin design and how to build it.
Oh, really?
So those designs became what was called the Motorboating Ideal Series, and there were several dozen of these collected designs and stuff that were published later in book form. Those books I found in the library when I was an early teenager. Yeah. The summer I was 15, my folks had come to the point of letting me take the boat out on Lake Ontario by myself. So a friend and I sailed out of Rochester, made a right turn, and went 45 miles down to Little Sodas Bay, or Fairhaven, as it's called. We were most of the way there, and with light airs, we were motor sailing, and the engine threw a rod. So we were then just sailing. we got in, landed safely, and I spent probably at least a month living on the boat there.
In Fairhaven?
In Fairhaven. Learned to make landings under sail. Did a lot of single-handed sailing.
This was on the 21-foot boat?
Right, yeah. Little fat gaff sloop. It cabin with comfortable sitting headroom in it. When I was 12, my father decided he was going to retake the Power Squadron course, the elementary piloting. And I went with him and a couple of his friends. Took the course, passed the course, test at the end, got a nice letter from the Power Squadrons, congratulations, you passed. When you get to be old enough, you can join the Power Squadron. So I never did get around to joining.
Oh, really?
So anyway, I had this sailing background.
Yeah.
Growing up through that. And that summer that I spent the month living, I had happened to have with me a bunch of the motorboating Ideal Series books. I spent a lot of time reading them, studying the designs, and got to really like their design approach and their little cruising boats.
Were they all motorboats then? Or they sailboats?
More sail and power.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say there were more sailboats than powerboats, at least the ones I remember.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got to apprentice with the Atkins. Then met Bill Garden summer of '65, I guess, and corresponded with him afterwards. Saying,
was he living in Seattle then?
He was in Seattle.
Yeah.
And I was interested in coming out here because in the summer of '65, after I'd met him, I drove out here and then drove down the coast and back east. Anyway, I was interested in coming out here because I saw there was all this wonderful boat building, custom boat building going on, and neat boats being created.
Mm-hmm.
Bill said, well, I don't have any openings, but Foss Tug needs somebody. And so I worked for Foss Tug for a couple of years drawing tugboats.
Oh, wow.
And there's some of the project I did apparently are still in service.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. And then I worked for Star Marine in Tacoma at the time, was building steel, aluminum, and ferro cement under the Secret brand name, licensed from England. And did that, and it was by that point I had a couple of design projects going on my own on the side. And in the spring of '69, I decided to try self-employment. So April 1st of 1969 was my first day of self-employment. No, I no longer had a paycheck. A regular one, at least.
Yeah.
Sometimes that date seemed to be auspicious in a not necessarily positive way. Over the first few years, I did learn about bookkeeping and what red ink was about.
So that was that in Tacoma or Seattle?
That was in Tacoma, and I was living on a floating home. I had two different floating homes that I lived out in Portage Bay and then in Lake Union. And I commuted to Tacoma while I was doing that, and I was just worked out of the houseboat and out in Seattle. Then bought a 50-foot fantail yacht called the Kai. It was a 1926 Coolidge design.
Wow.
Really lovely, elegant boat. And I just stumbled upon it one day in a brokerage, and I thought, this is the loveliest thing I've seen in a long time. And managed to convince a banker that we should be extended credit to buy this. So I did. In that that became my home for about a year and a half. And then I've been back cruising north and south with that a bit, and had met Ernie Gann and started to design Strumpet for him, which is a little 35-foot trawler yacht. And Ernie lived on San Juan Island, and it was going to be built at Jensen Shipyards here in Friday Harbor. And I ended up moving to Friday Harbor. Lived there, then went back to Seattle for a few years, and then back to Friday Harbor after we got Sunrise. And Sunrise is a 34-foot square topsail ketch that I designed.
Wow.
That had been started for another couple who was going to go offshore long distance cruising on it. And one day the guy came into the office and said, we've had a change in plans, we're getting divorced, and we need to sell a boat. And I said, and I found a banker again who would support my boat buying habit. And we got that, finished fitting her out, because she was pretty much empty inside.
Oh, really?
At that point. Yeah. So I made a couple little changes to what I'd designed for them. And I lived on that for a decade.
Wow.
Out of Friday Harbor.
And what kind of boat was that?
She's a Pinky hull form, which is a double-ender with a bulwarks extending back past the rudder and closing the rudder head. So it gave it a little more deck area and longer bulwarks.
Oh.
So it was 34 feet on deck, 38 on the bulwarks, and 50 feet with a bowsprit.
Wow.
So it had quite a spread of sail, and it was really interesting, nice boat.
Yeah. So would you live on that by yourself, Jay?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
So that was up. You were on that boat for 10 years, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Very cool. So you were still designing boats at that time?
Yes.
On your own? You were doing your own designs, yeah.
Yep.
So what were some of the early designs you did, Jay?
Well, one of the projects that I was doing when I got started self-employment was a 60-foot ketch for a couple from Port Angeles. And it was to be built in Faro Smith. And this was going along well. He managed to draw in people to volunteer to help him, and then he had one guy that he hired as a helper that did a really good, credible job of building the thing. And there was all these questions about, what is this, why are you doing this, how do you do this? Because there was quite a bit of interest in Faro Smith at the time. So somewhere along the line we came up with the idea, why don't we write a book about this? So as he's working on the boat, we put together a book.
Wow.
And
about building that boat?
Yeah, the book title was published as Practical Faro Cement Boat Building.
Oh, wow.
In 1970. And we sold through the first printing somewhere a year or two into it. International Marine expressed interest in it and bought the title from us. I think there were like 11,000 copies printed altogether between the three editions on it. And the approach that we had done there was similar to what I had learned about in the outfit in Tacoma, and they were doing the only type of Faro Cement work that was Lloyd's approved.
Okay.
So it was done to a higher standard.
It was insurable, huh?
Yeah, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that went along, and that generated a lot of interest. We did then a little 17-foot catboat design, because a lot of the popular misconceptions about ferrocement were that you couldn't do it under 30 feet. So we designed a little 17-foot catboat and built it and had it on display at the Seattle Boat Show. And then the following year, we did a little 20-foot gaff sloop and actually plastered it during the boat show. So that was all interesting, and we ended up selling a lot of plans for all those boats and created a bunch of others.
Were those all built in ferro cement then?
Initially, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And later we did fiberglass and wood versions of them, which are primarily what people are buying these days. Mostly the wood ones, some of the glass ones.
So what happened with ferro cement? Is that's kind of gone by the wayside, has it?
Largely, and the problem, as I saw it, was that it was the people that did the mass marketing of it said anybody can build it and it's cheap to build. And the results of those projects looked like it was done cheaply.
Oh.
And so it did not have a reputation for quality. I mean, we had this little 17-footer and then this 20-footer that we built at the boat show, and then we had it for our own boat as a demo boat. I'd go cruising in that, and people would say, "Oh, look, this is a lovely, where did you find this old wood boat?" I had no clue that it was not a traditional built boat.
Really?
You know, and it was just a matter of taking a little bit of care and the workmanship. And we had one boat that we did where the plastering job was like all the ones we'd done. It was just nicely smooth and faired. We put maybe a quart of body putty on it to do some little minor fairing, pull the mold off it, and then build a bunch of boats in fiberglass out of that mold that are really nicely finished.
Oh, wow.
It was an interesting time.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Since then, we've done a lot more wood boats, done glass boats, we've done a lot of steel and aluminum boats. The Florida Bay coaster designs, which has been doing now for 26 years, I guess, were built to be little mini freighter yachts. The first one that we built was a 50-footer, 18-foot of beam. The pilot house stack was 3 stories, and then sort of a split level. Behind the pilot house was a master stateroom, down a half a level.
Yeah.
Down half a level from that was a guest stateroom in the head. The master had its own head. And down a half a level from that was the saloon, family style, living, dining, kitchen. And down half a level from that was a stand-up engine room. And then up forward of that area was a 10-foot well deck, and then forward of that was a third stateroom with its own head. On that well deck, we had a big crane that was 3,000 or 4,000 pound rated with a 14-foot reach. We carried a Jeep on deck.
Really?
Yeah. And then we had above the Jeep were folding davits that we carried a 14-foot skiff on that as well.
Oh my goodness. You guys are well equipped.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you do a lot of cruising with that rig?
It did. I got to use it some. It led to a whole series of boats that were built on this style, and we call them freighter yachts, but they were.
Oh wow! So they look like a freighter, but they're liveaboard boats that you can do a lot with, huh?
Yeah.
Cool.
And the 35 is the smallest one we've done so far, which is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath.
Wow, those are cool. What do they build these out of, Jay?
Steel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's a 45, 50, and 55.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a different 55 that on deck, underneath the dinghy here, the black thing in there is a Volkswagen Golf, diesel Golf. And then up on top, he's got his air dinghy as well. There's a little helicopter.
Wow. These are cool pictures. Amazing. Yeah.
So that 17-foot catboat, 18-foot canoe yawl, 19-foot catboat, 20-foot gaff sloop, 32-foot trawler. This Sunrise, it was my home. It's her. This is the Badger that Voyaging on a Small Income was written by the people that had that.
Yeah.
This is Ernie Gann's 35-foot trawler Strumpet, 38-foot tug that was built in fiberglass, 38-foot coaster. That's the only one that wasn't built in steel. That one's aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cold-molded, a strip plank cold-molded 44-foot fantail trawler.
Wow.
It's a 45-foot pilot house cutter. This one was built for Steve Davis, who does all this wonderful artwork.
Oh, wow. That is a cool piece of artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's more coaster projects.
So it sounds like some of your designs were one-off designs and others were designs that you sell and a lot of people buy them, or is that right?
There were production boats and custom boats.
Custom boats, yeah.
Yeah, both.
Yeah. What do you say, what's your most popular design of all time, Jay? What would you say
the one we've sold the most of, or the one that brought in the most money?
Well,
the one we sold the most of would be the little 17-foot catboat. The first one was called Puffin.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what makes a boat a catboat?
Catboat has got a single mast with a single sail.
Yeah.
The mast is set well up in the bow to keep the sail forward.
Okay. Yeah, they're typically a pretty beamy boat.
Typically, yes.
Yeah.
Beamy boat.
Yeah. Okay. And these were made out of cement, fiberglass, and wood?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's your most popular one, huh?
Yeah.
Are there any boats, any of those here at the festival or around this area?
There is. I'm sure there are some around. There's a 21.5-foot version of this 20-foot Friendship that's here at the show.
Oh.
The boat's called Friendship.
Yes, the green boat.
Right.
Is that Paul?
Paul Miller. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that boat.
Yeah. Paul is a really excellent woodworker, and he's got wonderful detail.
Is that a cold-molded boat?
It's a strip cold-molded combination.
Yeah, that's a beautiful boat. So that's your design, huh?
Yep. And Paul is the guy who built the little fleet of little ferry boats that runs around the harbor in Victoria, as well as the fleets over on False Creek.
Really?
Yeah.
Are those your designs also? Or?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Where are those built out of? Steel or?
Primarily, they were done in plywood and epoxy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. And they're still up there running around, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. What size boats are they?
That's 20 feet long, 8 foot beam.
Small ferries.
Right. The Canadian rules are different than the Americans on carrying passengers for hire.
Yeah.
Under the American rules, if you want to carry a 7th passenger, more than 6, you have to go through the whole T-boat regulations of getting Coast Guard approved. So that's why you see a lot of 6-pack, as they call them, operations. You can carry up to 6 passengers without the Coast Guard formalities. In Canada, you can carry 12.
Oh, interesting. Because, I've heard that 6-pack rule. It's like, I never knew what that was.
Right. It relates to the Coast Guard licensing of passengers for hire carrying.
So in Canada, it's a 12-pack, huh?
Right.
For the same thing.
Which is a lot more sensible in my point of view. But.
Yeah, right. So those are 12-pack boats, huh?
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So how many designs have you done over the years, Jay?
Well, on Deltec I can answer actually. I'm working on design number 390 right now, but that's a hull number.
Oh.
And there's some of them where I've done a dozen or 24 variations on one hull.
Oh, really?
And I have never tried to count up how many of that kind of thing goes on.
Probably several hundred, though, huh?
Well, yeah, more than that. So
yeah, and you've designed boats from what size range has kind of been your profile?
From like a 7-foot dinghy,
okay,
to a 40-meter or 131-foot. At the time it was designed, 35 years ago, it was the largest cold molded sailing yacht in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
John Guswell was the project manager consultant on that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you
John had built a 37-foot pilot house cutter that I designed and started another one. And then all John's sons had built a little 8-foot cold molded dinghy for the first 37.
Uh-huh. Wow.
Anyway, I'd gotten to know John and we worked together on this big boat project.
Wow. Did you design his boat, Trekka?
No.
No.
No, Trekka was a Lawrence Giles, as was Treasure, his 45-footer that I think he still owns.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Gorgeous woodwork.
Yeah.
He's a very, very talented guy.
Yeah. So, so you've got your designs. People can purchase those in books or buy plans sets from you, or what, Jay? How does that work? Either way.
The website is benford.us, and on that website there's a list of the different plans we have available and prices for them.
Yeah.
We have half a dozen books of either detailed plans or study plans. The Small Ships is our book of study plans for power boats, and it's in its 5th edition. We've got Small Craft Plans, which is 15 sets of dinghy or open boat plans that are all in the book there. There's Pocket Cruisers and Tabloid Yachts. It's got a half a dozen sets for boat plans, a couple of sailboats and several power boats in there, including a couple of little fantail steamboats, 17 and 25. And then we've done our cruising designs is a sort of general sailboat catalog, once over lightly. And a book called Cat Boats has got half a dozen cat boat plans in it in pretty good detail. Not quite enough to build it, but almost. And then we've done Building Badger, and Badger was the design that we did that was the focus of the Voyaging on a Small Income book, which has been very popular. We published that in 1990. I think we're in our 7th printing on that.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Voyaging on a Small Income.
Yeah. At the time they wrote the book, their small income that they were living on was £1,300, which was about $2,000 a year. So they were exceedingly frugal.
And who is this?
This was Pete and Annie Hill.
Okay. So you wrote the book about them?
They wrote that book.
Oh, I see.
And and then Building Badger, Annie wrote the Voyaging on a Small Income. Building Badger, Pete wrote the first third of it, which is detailed photos and commentary on how he built Badger.
Yeah.
And the second portion, the 2/3 of the book, is a selection of our dory-derived style designs from 19 feet through 45 feet.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of information in there about the designs.
Yeah. Very cool. Is there, what characteristics are typical of your designs that make them maybe different from other designs? Are there certain things that make them distinguishable from other boats?
Well,
Jay?
I think the fact that I spent almost, not quite a majority of my life as an alleged adult living aboard gives me a focus on what it's like to be on the boat. What do we need to have it comfortable to live on, to be practical, and that practicality and livability is one of the things that people comment about.
I see. Yeah. So, quite a big portion of the boats you design are livable boats, and yeah,
of a great variety of sizes.
Yeah.
People living aboard. But
have you lived on one of your designs yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Of the 3 big boats that I've had to live aboard, one up the Sunrise was a boat that I designed. That was my home for a decade.
Wow.
Prior to that, I'd had the Kayak, a 50-foot fantail yacht, for a year and a half. And then later, we had the 75-foot East Coast houseboat that was our home for 5 years.
Wow.
It was a 1,300 square foot house that you could take cruising.
Wow. That must have been fun.
All the comforts of home.
Really?
And you could move it.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you doing here at the festival, Jay? What you've been doing some classes, or what presentations have you been involved in?
I had come to the festival when it started in '77.
The very first one.
Yeah, through '83, and in that time we used to be doing some seminars and some design-related talks.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, I said, why don't we try doing that again? When I came back, and we organized, and this was the second year we've done it, a designers panel where we take questions from the audience and several different opinions or responses to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we agree, and sometimes we don't all agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's an opportunity for people to come out, ask questions, and get some feedback on what ideas or theories they may have.
Mm-hmm. Right. What's the favorite boat, your favorite boat of all time? Or do you have one? One of your favorites.
I have a number of boats that I really like and would like to enjoy cruising on again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, living on Sunrise for a decade, there are times, not so much now, but after we'd moved off it for a while, I'd wake up from a dream where I was sailing the boat or we were doing something, cruising up, and it was just realistically there.
Yeah.
Less so now. And I've had the opportunity to cruise on several of our Florida Bay coasters. 35, 45, 50, 65, and those are a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we've got lots of different things
that you've enjoyed.
I've done and enjoyed.
Yeah. Do you have a boat these days at all?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We just moved along. We had a couple of 6-hour canoes that we built with the kids. And,
oh, wow.
We had 2 different 11-foot dinghies that were my design. But those have all moved along. We're boatless.
Wow.
At this point.
Wow. So the 6-hour canoe, I've seen that book. You can't even buy it, can you now?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you can?
Yeah, we published it, and it's still in print.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And but it's 2 sheets of 6mm plywood that become a canoe.
Yeah, right.
And it's used with a lot of youth boat building programs to give kids an opportunity to learn boat building and then get an experience with the results.
Mm-hmm.
And so be able to say, I worked on this, I built this.
Yeah, very cool. Can you build it in 6 hours?
Somewhere I read about there was a group that held contests with team boat building to do it like that. Mike O'Brien, who is the design editor for Wooden Boat, was the originator of this boat design, and he said that he built the first one in 6 hours.
Wow.
I've heard of some of the contests where they, in 3 to 4 hours, have actually got one together.
Wow. Wow.
When we did them with our kids, when each one of them was in 6th grade, it was a 2-weekend project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Little time Saturday, little time Sunday, and then the same again the next weekend.
Yeah.
It was done.
Cool. Very good. Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast today, Jay. You want to give us your contact information again so those listening can know where to go to get more information about your designs?
Yeah, the website is benford.us. Our book publishing business, Tiller Books, is on tillerbooks.com. Or you can phone me at Benford Design Group is 410-745-3235.
Okay, and Benford is spelled Benford.
Right.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Well, thanks for your time today, Jay. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thanks for doing the interview, Jay. It was fun to hook up and get to meet you. We had Jay and I had tried to hook up or talked about hooking up the year before when he was out for the festival, but it didn't happen. So it was really great to meet you and your wife and have a good time. So I appreciate that. Thank you. If you'd like to connect with me, you can do so by email. Shoot me an email at woodenboatdan@gmail.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter at hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. It is a free, almost monthly e-newsletter. You can write comments on my website, and you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and it seems like I'm missing one there. Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Maybe that's it. And if you look for Wooden Boat Dan, you'll see me there. So I'd love to hook up with you. That would be cool. If you're doing some holiday shopping on Amazon or other types of shopping, I would encourage you to go through my link, and I get paid a small commission. hookedonwoodenboats.com/Amazon. Takes you to their website. You make your purchase of anything at the regular price, and I get paid a commission, usually of 4%, which is helpful in paying for the costs of the podcast. I appreciate that because there's folks that are doing that. Thank you very much. Well, Christmas is less than 2 weeks away now. I can't believe it, 13 days. I'm actually publishing this on December 12th. So anyway, I hope you have a great Christmas. We're pretty excited here to be celebrating Christmas again, like we do every year, getting together with family and just counting our blessings and all the great things that we've been blessed with in our lives. So I hope you guys have a good holiday season. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan over and out. God bless. Have a good week. Bye-bye.